if we would like to work out the area of a circle, we need to understand and remember what the formula for the area of a circle is. So the formula for the area of a circle is equal to pi r squared. And pi r squared is equal to pi times r squared. And remember that that's squared. You are only squaring your radius. That r represents the radius, stands for radius. And you are only squaring your radius. You are not saying pi times r and then squaring it. Right, and then we obviously need to know what pi is. Pi is an irrational number, which means it has an infinite number of decimal places. So when we are working with pi, without the help of a calculator, what we need to do is first round pi off. So we could round pi off to 3, or we could round it off to 3.14, or we could use 22 over 7 as a fraction, because 22 over 7 will give us even more decimal places, even though 22 over 7 isn't actually what pi is equal to, because pi is an irrational number. We can work with 22 over 7 in order to help us get as close as possible to what pi is. So let's just have a look here on the side. Pi is equal to, is an irrational number, but we use 22 over 7, which is the same as 22.000 divided by 7, because remember, a fraction is the same as a division. So what we would like to do is see how many decimal points we can get to. So 7 into 22 goes 3 times, remainder 1. 7 into 10, and we bring up our decimal point. 7 into 10 fits once and a remainder of 3. 7 into 30 fits 4 times with a remainder of 2. 7 fits into 20 twice with a 2 times 7 is 14. The difference between 14 and 20 is 6. 7 now fits into 60 8 times, and there's a remainder of 4. 7 fits into 40 5 times, and there will be a remainder of 5. And as you can see, the pattern will keep continuing, and there will be an infinite number of decimal places. So as you can see, if we were to round this number 3.142857 off to 2 decimal places to the nearest hundredth, we would end up with 3.14. So that's what we're working with there. So obviously 22 over 7 is the most accurate use of pi, but it depends on what your teacher prefers. Your teacher might ask you to just start with 3, which we'll also do, and then move on to 3.14, and then move on to 22 over 7. So let's have a look. If we are working with this shape here, this circle, we have got a radius of 7 centimeters. So we need to know what either the radius or the diameter is of our circle in order to work out the area of our circle. If we were given the diameter of the circle, then you obviously just divide your diameter by 2 to get what your radius is, because your diameter, remember, is the longest chord in your circle. It goes through the center point, and it is actually just made up of 2 radii. So 2 radii make up 1 diameter, so half your diameter is equal to 1 radius. So we've got a radius of 7 centimeters. So let's use pi as 3 for now. So pi is equal to 3, and we multiply that by 7 squared. So we've got 3 multiplied by 49, because 7 squared is 49, and that will give us an answer of 147 centimeters squared. So that's what the area of our circle will be if we are working with pi equal to 3. If we would like to work with pi is equal to, let's say, 3.14, we would again just say area equals pi r squared, which is equal to 3.14 multiplied by r squared. We know that r is, or our radius is equal to 7, and we square that and we end up with 3.14 multiplied by 49, and that gives us an answer of 153.83 centimeters squared. Right, now if we would like to work with, so this would be your answer if we are working with 3.14 as pi for this circle here. So if we would now like to work with 22/7, we again write area equals pi r squared, and if we are working with 22/7, we say pi is equal to 22/7 multiplied by r squared, which we now know is 49/1, and then you can cross cancel 7 into itself once, 7 into 49 goes 7 times, and then you work out 22 times 7 and 1 times 1, and you end up with an answer of 154 centimeters squared, 154/1, which is equal to 154, and then our measurement is again centimeters squared. So as you can see, these three answers are quite similar to each other, but 22/7 will be our more accurate answer because we are working with more decimal places, because remember when we worked out what 22/7 was, we ended up with many decimal places, whereas working with 3.14 we rounded it off to only 2 decimal places, and obviously working with just our 3 is less accurate because we have no decimal places. We've rounded our pi off to the nearest unit. So 147, then 153.83, and then 154 centimeters squared. So depending on what your teacher would prefer, obviously it's better to start with pi is equal to 3 just to get used to the formula, and then you can move on to 3.14 if you are happy timesing with decimals, and then you can move on to 22/7, and you need to be then happy with timesing with fractions, and then preferably to bring that fraction answer back into a decimal for the area of your circle. If we would like to work out what the area of this circle is, we need to first write down the formula, pi r squared, and because in this circle we are only given the diameter, we need to work out what the radius is from the diameter. So we need to remember that the diameter is double the radius, so in order to get our radius we need to halve our diameter. So our diameter is 12, so we divide 12 by 2 to get 6 millimeters, and 6 millimeters is therefore our radius. Right, so let's work out the area of this circle, first using pi equal to 3, then we will use pi equal to 3.14, and then we will use pi equal to 22/7. So the area of this circle with a diameter of 12 and a radius of 6 millimeters is equal to, firstly, let's use pi as 3 multiplied by our radius squared, which is 6 squared, and that gives us 3 multiplied by 36, and that's 36 millimeters squared, because this is 6 millimeters squared. So 6 millimeters multiplied by 6 millimeters gives us an answer of 36 millimeters squared. 3 multiplied by 36 millimeters squared will give us an answer of 108 millimeters squared. So the answer to the area of this circle is equal to 108 millimeters squared when we use pi equal to 3. Let's now have a look at the area of this circle using pi equal to 3.14. So again, we write down our formula, pi r squared, and pi r squared, we now need to plug in our numbers. So pi is equal to 3.14 multiplied by our 6 squared. And remember that's 6 millimeters squared. So we say 6 millimeters multiplied by 6 millimeters, which again gives us 36 millimeters squared. But now we are multiplying 3.14 by 36 millimeters squared. And 3.14 multiplied by 36 millimeters squared gives us an answer of 113.04 millimeters squared. So the area of this circle with a diameter of 12 millimeters and a radius of 6 millimeters gives us an answer of 113.04 millimeters squared. Let's now have a look at the area of this circle using pi equal to 22 over 7. So area is equal to pi r squared, which is equal to 22 over 7 multiplied by 6 squared over 1. And 22 over 7 multiplied by 36 over 1. We cannot simplify or cross cancel with our 7 and our 36, so we simply multiply our numerators together to get 792, and we multiply our denominators together to get 7 multiplied by 1 is 7. What we then need to do is on the side work out 792.00 divided by 7, and that will give us our answer as a decimal. So 7 fits into 7 once, 7 fits into 9 once with a remainder of 2, 7 fits into 22 3 times. We bring up our decimal point and we have a remainder of 1. 7 fits into 7 fits into 10 once with a remainder of 3. 7 fits into 30 4 times, and there will continue to be remainders because remember that pi is an irrational number. So when we are working with 22 over 7, we will also get many decimal places. So we would usually just round our answer off to 2 decimal places. So that's what we will do in this example as well. So 792 divided by 7, or 792 over 7, gives us an answer of 113.14, and that again is in millimeters squared because this 6 here was 6 millimeters. So we said 6 millimeters multiplied by 6 millimeters gave us 36 millimeters squared. So just remember to insert your measurement at the end, and because we are working with area, our measurement will always be squared. When we are working with the area of a semicircle, what we need to do is just work with our normal area formula for the area of a circle, which is pi r squared, and then we just divide that answer by 2 when we are working with a semicircle. If we were working with a quarter of a circle, we would divide our answer by 4. The formula for the full circle, we would divide that by 4. If we were working with 3/4 of a circle, we would then work out 3/4 of the area of the full circle, and we would then end up with our answer. So pi r squared divided by 2 is the formula for the area of a semicircle. We can also use half of pi r squared, and we will get the same answer. So when we are working with a quarter of a circle, we would write there a quarter of pi r squared. When we are working with 3/4 of a circle, we would write 3/4 of pi r squared. When we are working with 5/6 of a circle, we would write 5/6 of pi r squared. So bearing this in mind, let's find what the area of this semicircle is. So area equals pi r squared divided by 2. Right, so let's first work with pi equal to 3. So if pi is equal to 3, We multiply our pi, which is 3, by our radius. And remember, this here is our diameter, which is 18. So we need to divide our diameter by 2 in order to get 9 meters, which is equal to our radius. So our radius is 9 meters, and we square that, and then we divide by 2. And we're always going to do that first before we divide by 2. So 3 multiplied by 9 squared is 3 multiplied by 81 meters squared, and then we divide that by 2, and that will give us an answer of 243 meters squared divided by 2, which gives us an answer of 121.5 meters squared. So the answer to the area of this semicircle when we are using pi equal to 3 will be 121.5 meters squared. Right, let's now have a look at the area of this semicircle using pi equal to 3.14. So again, area is equal to pi r squared divided by 2, and that is equal to 3.14 multiplied by 9 meters squared. We do that, and we divide that by 2. So we're going to do that first. So we say 3.14 multiplied by 81, which is 81 meters squared, divided by 2. And 3.14 multiplied by 81 gives us an answer of 254.34 meters squared divided by 2. And that gives us a final answer of 127.17 meters squared. So the answer to the area of this semicircle using pi equal to 3.14 gives us an answer of 127.17 meters squared. Let's now have a look at the area of this semicircle using pi equal to 22 over 7. So pi r squared divided by 2 is our formula still, and we use 22 over 7 multiplied by, I'm just going to go straight to 81 over 1, even though you should include this step here as well. You should say 22 over 7 multiplied by 9 squared over 1, and then you divide by 2. I'm just cutting corners and taking shortcuts so that I can save space. So 22 now multiplied by 81 gives us an answer of 1782 divided by 7, or over 7, and then we divide that answer by 2. This gives us an answer of 254.57 divided by 2, or over 2. And this you will obviously have to do in your division house. You say 1782.00 divided by 7. So you only need 2 decimal places. You can just round your answer off. And then that gives us an answer of 254.57 that you need to again divide. And we're dividing by 2 now. And you again do that in your division house. And we end up with a final answer of 127.28 meters squared. So the area of this semicircle using pi equals 22 over 7 gives us a final answer of 127.28 meters squared. If we would like to find the area of a quarter of a circle, what we need to do is find out what the full circle would have been. So pi r squared is the area for a full circle, and we then divide that by 4 because a quarter of a circle is simply a full circle divided by 4. So another way of writing this formula is to say a quarter of our full circle, which is pi r squared. So you can use either of these formulae to work out the area of a quarter of a circle. So pi r squared divided by 4, or a quarter of pi r squared. So let's now work out the area of this quarter of a circle using pi equal to 3. So pi r squared divided by 4 equals to 3 multiplied by our radius, which is 8 squared, and we divide that by 4. We will always do our full area first. So 3 multiplied by 64 and then divided by 4, which is equal to 192 divided by 4, and that gives us an answer of 48 millimeters squared. So the answer to the area of a quarter of a circle, this particular circle with a radius of 8 millimeters, will give us an answer of 48 millimeters squared. Let's now look at the area of this quarter of a circle using pi equal to 3.14. So again, area is equal to pi r squared divided by 4, and that is equal to 3.14 multiplied by 8 squared, and we divide that by 4. So 3.14 multiplied by 64 and then divided by 4. 3.14 multiplied by 64 is equal to 200.96 millimeters squared, because the 64 is in millimeters squared, because that 8 was 8 millimeters. 8 millimeters multiplied by 8 millimeters gives us 64 millimeters squared. And then we divide that answer by 4 to get a final answer of 50.24 millimeters squared. Right, so when we are using pi equal to 3.14, we get an answer for the area of this quarter of a circle as 50.24 millimeters squared. Let's now have a look at the area of this quarter of a circle using pi equal to 22 over 7. So what we can do is use the different formula. We can use a quarter of pi r squared, and a quarter of pi r squared, so pi is 22 over 7 multiplied by our radius squared, which is equal to 64 over 1, and we keep bringing down our quarter. We can change this into a multiplication. Then we're first going to do this because this is the area of our full circle. So 22 over 7 multiplied by 64 over 1, we end up with 1408 divided by 7. And you can then cross cancel here with your 4 and your 1408. But if you first work this out in a decimal format, you can do that as well. But we can also just multiply our numerators and multiply our denominators. So you've got lots of different options here when we're working with fractions. So we could end up with 1408 divided by 4 multiplied by 7 is 28. We can then simplify, and then we end up with a final answer of 50.28 millimeters squared. So when we are working with pi equal to 22 over 7 for the area of this quarter of a circle with a radius of 8 millimeters, we end up with an answer of 50.28 millimeters squared. If we would like to work out the area of 3/4 of a circle, we need to work out what 3/4 of your full circle is. We need to work out what 3/4 of the area of a full circle would be. So 3/4 of pi r squared is the formula for the area of 3/4 of a circle. So let's work out the area of this 3/4 of a circle using pi equal to 3. So we write down 3/4 of pi r squared, and that gives us 3/4 of 3 multiplied by our radius squared, and our radius is 2 meters, so 2 meters squared, and that gives us an answer of 3/4 of, or multiplied, because remember of is the same as a multiplication, multiplied by 3 multiplied by 4. So that gives us an answer of 3/4 multiplied by 12, and let's put that over 1. And what we can do is then cross cancel. So 4 goes into itself once, 4 goes into 12 3 times. We then say our numerators multiplied by each other, which is 3 multiplied by 3, gives us an answer of 9 over 1, or just 9. And then we've got meters squared. So the area of this 3/4 of a circle is equal to 9 meters squared, when we're working with pi equal to 3. Let's now have a look at the area of this 3/4 of a circle using pi equal to 3.14. So again, we've got 3/4 of pi r squared, and that's 3/4 of, or multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 2 meters squared, and we do that first. So we've got 3/4 multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 4, because 2 squared is 4, and that's actually 4 meters squared. So just remember your measurement right at the end if you don't do it and you're working out. And then we get 3/4 multiplied by 12.56, because 12.56 is 3.14 multiplied by 4. And then what we can do is convert either 12.56 into a fraction or 3/4 into a decimal. So 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75. We multiply by 12.56, which is quite a big calculation on the side, and we end up with an answer of 9.42 meters squared. So when we are working with pi equal to 3.14, we get an answer of 9.42 meters squared for the area of this 3/4 of a circle. Right, so just so that I can make some space, I'm going to rub this out so that we can work with pi equal to 22 over 7. So we'll keep that formula there because the formula always stays the same. And let's work with pi equal to 22 over 7. So we've got 3/4 of pi, which is 22 over 7, multiplied by 2 squared, or 2 meters squared, is 3/4 multiplied by 22 over 7 and multiplied by 4, and we put our 4 over 1. Right, so now what we can actually do is just cross cancel and multiply all the way across. So we can cross cancel that 4 goes into itself once with this 4, which also goes into itself once. So you can do that when you are multiplying with fractions. Right, and then we end up with, we can't simplify much further, so we end up with 3 multiplied by 22, and 3 multiplied by 22 is 66, and we put that over 7 because 1 times 7 times 1 is equal to 7, and 66 over 7 is the same as 66 divided by 7, which you can do in your division house, and we end up with an answer of 9.42 meters squared. Right, so when we are working with pi equal to 22 over 7, the area of this 3/4 of a circle with a radius of 2 meters will give us an answer of 9.42 meters squared.